Standing like colossal stone sentinels in the vast desert near Cairo, the ancient pyramids of Egypt gleam under the searing sun. Built more than 2,000 years before the birth of Christ, these enduring monuments have captivated humanity for millennia, not only for their grandeur but for the endless questions they raise. These massive tombs, once clad in dazzling white limestone, were constructed not just as burial sites but as eternal fortresses meant to protect the deepest secrets of the dead. Across thousands of years, they have inspired countless myths, legends, and scientific riddles. How did a civilization without cranes, engines, or even the wheel manage to construct structures so massive and precise? Each stone block in the Great Pyramid weighs between 2 and 15 tons, and yet they were placed with such accuracy that a credit card cannot fit between them. The entire structure weighs nearly 6 million tons, the equivalent of 16 Empire State Buildings stacked together. Why would a nation devote so many resources and generations of manpower to honor the dead? Who were the men who dragged billions of pounds of stone across the sands of Egypt? And how did they achieve the architectural perfection we still struggle to understand today? These are not just idle questions. They speak to the heart of what it means to build something that lasts beyond memory. Today, with the help of cutting-edge science, archaeologists are peeling back the layers of stone and myth. They are replacing centuries-old speculation with hard evidence. Using remote sensing, robotic explorers, 3D imaging, and microgravity scans, they are uncovering the truth behind the ancient legends. No longer do we rely on gunpowder or brute force, as early Egyptologists did, who in their eagerness to uncover secrets, sometimes destroyed more than they discovered. Today's researchers are far more patient and precise, combining respect for antiquity with the curiosity of the future. Some scholars believe that even now, long after its official sealing, hidden chambers still lie within the Great Pyramid, perhaps even the true burial chamber of Pharaoh Khufu. Yet for other researchers, the true wonder of the pyramids lies not in what might be hidden inside, but in the astonishing feat of construction itself. How did people living over 4 millennia ago, using only primitive tools, build something so large, so aligned, and so enduring? That question is where our journey begins. The pyramids have long been called tombs for the pharaohs, but that explanation, while partly true, barely scratches the surface of their profound cosmic significance. To the ancient Egyptians, a pyramid was more than a final resting place. It was a portal, a resurrection chamber, and perhaps most astonishingly, a divine engine built to transform a man into a god. Unpacking this meaning requires us to enter a very different mindset, one where architecture, astronomy, religion, and the soul were woven into a seamless vision of eternity. The pyramid as a spiritual machine. In modern terms, we might call the pyramid a structure of transition, from the physical to the spiritual, from earth to the afterlife, from man to divinity. For the Egyptians, the pharaoh was not merely a ruler. He was a living god, the embodiment of Horus in life, and after death, he would reunite with Osiris, lord of the underworld. His death was not an end. It was a dangerous journey that threatened the balance of the cosmos itself. The pyramid was built not to bury him, but to help him rise, literally and symbolically. Its shape, its orientation, its internal chambers, and even its mysterious shafts all played a role in this sacred ascension. This explains why the ancient Egyptians poured immense national resources into building these structures. They weren't simply commemorating their kings, they were preserving the harmony of the universe. The Pyramid Texts, a roadmap to the afterlife. In 1879, a remarkable discovery was made at Saqqara, in one of the smaller pyramids. A workman followed a jackal, symbol of Anubis, god of embalming, into a collapsed shaft. There, on the walls, he saw carvings of hieroglyphs. What he had stumbled upon was the earliest known religious scripture in human history, the Pyramid Texts. These ancient inscriptions, composed over 4,000 years ago, contained prayers, spells, hymns, and instructions for the deceased king to navigate the afterlife. Some spells were protective, warding off demons and pitfalls. Others granted supernatural abilities: flight, fire, shape-shifting. Together, they formed a kind of ritual programming meant to activate once the king's body was laid to rest. As Egyptologist James Allen describes it, the pyramid itself was not a passive monument. It was a ritual machine, activated by words, symbols, and ceremony. This machine would resurrect the soul, carry it past chaos, and launch it into the stars. Aligning with the cosmos. Architecture of the sky. The orientation of the pyramids is no accident. The Great Pyramid is aligned with remarkable precision to the 4 cardinal points: north, south, east, and west. But the alignment doesn't stop there. The shafts from the king's and queen's chambers point not at random, but towards specific celestial bodies. The southern shaft of the king's chamber aligns with Al-Nitak, the star at the end of Orion's belt, representing Osiris. The northern shaft aligns with Thuban, the pole star at the time of pyramid construction. The queen's chamber's shafts point toward Sirius, the star associated with Isis and other relevant constellations. These alignments were not symbolic. They were functional, guiding the soul to its proper place in the heavens. As pyramid researcher Robert Bovell suggests, the entire Giza complex may have been designed as a mirror of the Orion constellation, with the pyramids representing the stars of Orion's belt. This theory, though debated, has captivated researchers and continues to spark investigations into the astronomical meaning embedded in stone. A monument to cosmic order. Ma'at, at the heart of Egyptian belief, was the concept of Ma'at, the principle of truth, balance, order, and cosmic harmony. Everything, from farming to law to architecture, had to adhere to Ma'at. The pyramid was the ultimate expression of this principle. Its flawless geometry, its cosmic alignment, its ritual functions, all served to restore and maintain Ma'at at the moment of the king's death. Because when a pharaoh died, chaos threatened to return. The Nile might not flood. Crops could fail. Foreign enemies might invade. The king's successful transition to the afterlife was seen as critical to the survival of the kingdom. The pyramid was built not only for the king, but for the entire world he was meant to protect. Symbolism in shape. The power of the triangle. Why the pyramid shape? Why not a cube or a dome or a mastaba? The answer is layered with meaning. Stability. Structurally, the pyramid is one of the most stable shapes in architecture. It distributes weight evenly, with a low center of gravity and a wide base. Sun rays. Some scholars believe the pyramid mimics the shape of sunbeams. When the sun emerges from clouds, its rays spread downward in a triangular form, connecting heaven to earth. The Benben stone. In an ancient creation myths, the first mound of land to emerge from the primordial waters was called the Benben. The pyramid's capstone, or pyramidion, was a symbolic echo of this sacred stone. Divine geometry. The triangle, particularly in the form of the golden ratio, was associated with divine perfection. The pyramid may embody this cosmic ideal, linking it to universal harmony. In every way, from foundation to capstone, the pyramid was an interface between the human and the divine. The pyramid as protection. Beyond helping the pharaoh ascend to the heavens, the pyramid also protected his remains. Massive granite blocks sealed off chambers. False passageways confused tomb robbers. The internal layout was a maze designed to frustrate intruders. Yet, ironically, these defenses often failed. Almost all royal tombs, including the Great Pyramid, were looted in antiquity. Despite this, the symbolic power of the pyramid endured. Because even if the king's body was lost, the idea remained. The pyramid had already done its job, launching the king's soul into the stars. By now, we've seen the incredible engineering behind Egypt's Great Pyramids, the precision, the manpower, the logistics. But to truly understand why these colossal monuments were built, we must leave the realm of stones and tools and enter the world of belief, magic, and the afterlife. Because the pyramids were never just tombs. They were cosmic machines designed to launch the souls of kings into the heavens, to transform man into God. Beyond death, the pharaoh's eternal role. To the ancient Egyptians, death was not the end. It was a journey that, if successful, would allow a pharaoh to be reborn as a star, watching over his people for eternity. In their eyes, the death of a king was not only a tragedy, it was a potential catastrophe. If not properly guided into the next world, the pharaoh's soul could be lost, and with it, the entire balance of the cosmos. Thus, the pyramid was built not merely as a resting place, but as a launch pad to the stars, a sacred transition point between Earth and the divine. Star maps and cosmic engineering. Some of the strongest clues to this deeper purpose lie not in the construction itself, but in the mysterious shafts found deep within the Great Pyramid. These narrow, stone-lined passages, just 8 inches wide, rise from the king's and queen's chambers toward the sky. For centuries, scholars debated their purpose. At first, they were thought to be air vents, meant to provide oxygen to workers building the interior. But new theories emerged, most notably from pyramid researcher Robert Bauval. Bauval noticed something strange. When mapped, the layout of the 3 main pyramids at Giza mirrors the stars of Orion's belt. 2 bright stars and a third, dimmer one, slightly offset. Could this be coincidence? To Bauval, it was not. He proposed that the pyramid complex was deliberately aligned with Orion and other significant stars in the Egyptian sky. He further discovered that the shafts themselves pointed directly to important celestial bodies. One of the southern shafts aligns with Alnitak, the star at the end of Orion's belt, representing Osiris, the god of death and resurrection. Another shaft points to Sirius, associated with Isis, Osiris's consort and the goddess of life and rebirth. These weren't ventilation ducts, they were celestial conduits, aligned with the heavens to guide the soul of the dead pharaoh directly to the gods. This theory, called the Orion correlation theory, remains controversial, but it highlights the depth of the Egyptians' spiritual cosmology. They believed the stars were not distant lights, but gateways, points of rebirth, where a soul could join the divine realm. Magic, ritual, and the science of the afterlife. The inner chambers of the pyramids, though bare today, were once filled with incredible ritual power. The walls of some tombs, particularly in the pyramid complex at Saqqara, were covered in thousands of lines of hieroglyphic spells and prayers. These are known as the pyramid texts, the oldest known religious writings in human history. Translated by scholars like James Allen, these texts reveal a chilling and powerful intent. The pyramid was a machine for resurrection. The magic carved into its walls was meant to activate at death, to help the pharaoh survive the trials of the afterlife and ascend to the stars. Each spell was specific. Some were designed to protect the king from demonic forces. Others gave him power to transform into animals, control fire, or fly. This was not superstition. It was, in the Egyptian worldview, science. A spiritual technology built on thousands of years of belief, ritual, and observation. And it wasn't only magic. Every item buried with the king, food, weapons, gold, clothing, had a role. They were essentials for the next world, where life continued, but in ideal form. If you wanted something in the afterlife, you had to bring it with you. According to Professor Salima Ikram, an expert in Egyptian funerary practices, the afterlife was very much like this life, just better. And everything you wanted you needed to prepare in advance. So when you imagine a pyramid, don't think of it as a simple stone tomb. Imagine it as a fully equipped starship, loaded with supplies, charged with spells, and aimed at the cosmos. Sealed for eternity. Once the burial and rituals were complete, the pyramid was sealed, in theory, for all eternity. The corridors were blocked with massive granite plugs. Secret doors were closed. Traps were set. The pharaoh's body, mummified and wrapped with amulets, now lay at the center of the greatest machine ever built by man. And then, silence. For 4,500 years. No light, no sound. Just the weight of millions of tons of stone, holding vigil over the king's soul. But in 1879, a strange twist of fate changed everything. The Jackal and the Lost Texts. A workman, walking near a ruined pyramid at Saqqara, saw a jackal, the animal sacred to Anubis, the god of mummification and the dead. The jackal seemed to beckon him. Curious, the man followed and discovered a small tunnel. Inside, he found a hidden chamber. Its walls were covered with hieroglyphs. This was the first recorded sighting of the pyramid texts, long forgotten and buried by centuries of sand. These texts would revolutionize our understanding of what the pyramids were really for. They showed us that the ancients had left instructions, not on how to build the pyramids, but how to use them. The pyramid as a symbol, even beyond the technical and magical functions, the very shape of the pyramid carries meaning. It echoes the Ben stone, a mythical object thought to be the first thing to rise from the primordial waters at the dawn of creation. Some say it was a meteorite, others, a divine relic lost to history. But its shape, a four-sided pyramid, became a sacred symbol. The capstone of a pyramid, often covered in gold, represented the sun itself. And when sunlight broke through clouds, forming a visible beam, the Egyptians saw a mirror of their creation, a pyramid of light descending from heaven. Was the pyramid a ladder to the sky? A ray of the sun? A symbolic mountain? In truth, it was all of these. The Great Pyramid of Giza is not only astonishing due to its size, but also because of its incredible precision. Built more than 2,500 years before Christ, this monumental structure stood at 146.6 meters tall and was composed of over 2.3 million stone blocks, each weighing between 2.5 and 15 tons. The total weight is estimated to be nearly 6 million tons, the equivalent of 16 Empire State Buildings combined. Yet the marvel goes beyond just mass and scale. Each side of the pyramid measures exactly 230.4 meters in length, with deviations of less than 5 centimeters between them. In other words, the ancient Egyptians executed geometrical calculations with near-perfect accuracy, without computers, digital compasses, or laser leveling tools. Using only ropes, wooden rods, and keen celestial observations, they accomplished what even modern engineers find difficult to replicate. So how did they do it? The secret of alignment, guided by the stars. To orient the pyramid accurately, ancient architects had to align each side perfectly with the cardinal directions: north, south, east, and west. Today, engineers use GPS and digital laser alignment systems. But the Egyptians only had the night sky. By studying the pole stars, particularly those in Ursa Minor and Ursa Major, they could track where stars rose and set throughout the year. From these points, they would draw a line directly in between, revealing true north. Some researchers propose that they built a semicircular artificial horizon to aid in their observations. When a star would rise and set across the structure, they marked the points and split the distance, producing a line aimed precisely north. The result? The Great Pyramid is aligned to within 1/20th of a degree of true north, an accomplishment few modern structures can claim. A perfect base, using water to find level. To construct a pyramid hundreds of feet tall, a perfectly flat base was essential. Even a small deviation at the base would translate to significant misalignment at the summit. But how did the Egyptians, with no machinery, level such an enormous surface? British engineer Dennis Stocks proposed that they used water, nature's most reliable leveling tool. The Egyptians likely dug trenches along the projected base of the pyramid and filled them with water. Any high or low points would be revealed, and they would chip the rock away until the waterline was even. This is effectively a primitive version of a laser level, using nothing but gravity and simple tools. The result was a base so flat that it still boggles the minds of modern engineers. Low-tech tools, high precision. Once the base was leveled and aligned, the builders had to maintain that precision throughout the construction process. As new layers of stone were added, the structure had to stay level or risk collapse. To achieve this, the Egyptians used a simple but ingenious tool, the A-frame. Made from two wooden beams joined at the top, it suspended a plumb line. When placed on a surface, if the plumb line aligned with a pre-marked line, the surface was considered level. This was their version of a modern-day spirit level. Using this tool, builders could ensure that every new layer was even before stacking the next. They repeated this process, stone by stone, day after day, for over 23 years. Remarkably, it's estimated that a stone block was placed every 2 minutes to meet the construction timeline. Stone quarrying. Without iron. One of the biggest mysteries is how the Egyptians sourced over 2 million massive stones, and how they moved them. For the softer limestone, they quarried near Tura, close to modern-day Cairo. But they didn't have steel tools. Instead, they used copper chisels, which seemed illogical since copper is a soft metal. However, chemical analysis revealed that ancient Egyptian copper naturally contained small amounts of arsenic, which made it stronger. This accidental metallurgical advantage allowed them to cut limestone effectively. Workers used wooden mallets to strike copper chisels at angles, chipping off large fragments. Granite, however, was much harder. Found in Aswan and used for important features like the king's chamber, granite couldn't be cut with copper chisels. Instead, the Egyptians used copper saws without teeth, combined with quartz-rich sand as an abrasive. The sand embedded into the soft copper and did the actual cutting by grinding the granite slowly over time. While extremely slow, it could take up to 4 months to carve a single sarcophagus. This method was surprisingly effective. It was not speed that made the pyramids possible. It was perseverance and ingenuity. Not all pyramids were perfect. Before the gleaming perfection of Giza's Great Pyramid, there was a time of trial, error, and innovation. Monumental mistakes were made, some nearly catastrophic. But each failure led to new insight, and those insights culminated in one of the greatest architectural achievements in human history. One such turning point was the construction of the enigmatic Bent Pyramid, a strange, beautiful monument that still stands today, half angular and half sloped, like a monument caught between two decisions. But before we explore what went wrong, let's understand how the Egyptians even began experimenting with such daring structures. From steps to slopes, a new vision of power. The earliest pyramids were not the smooth-sided giants we recognize today. The very first pyramid, the Step Pyramid of Djoser at Saqqara, built around 2600 BCE, was more of a stacked mastaba, a tiered stone structure rising 204 feet from the desert floor. Designed by the famous architect Imhotep, it marked a revolutionary shift, the world's first monumental stone building. This step design evolved into a new ambition, a true geometrical pyramid, smooth-sided, elegant, and symbolic of a perfect connection between heaven and earth. It was Pharaoh Sneferu, father of Khufu, who would take on this challenge. He built more pyramids than any other pharaoh, refining the technique through both failure and success. And nowhere is this process more evident than in the bent pyramid at Dashur. The bent pyramid, a beautiful mistake. On first glance, the bent pyramid appears elegant, until you notice the sudden angle change halfway up. Its lower half rises at a steep 55 degrees, but midway, the slope suddenly softens to 43 degrees. Why? According to archaeologists Maragioglio and Rinaldi, who extensively surveyed the pyramid, the structure was built on unstable clay and sand, with only its outer edges resting on solid rock. As it rose, the immense weight began to destabilize the core, threatening a total collapse. This posed a dire challenge: either abandon the project or find a solution. Egyptian engineers chose innovation. They abruptly reduced the angle, flattening the top portion to relieve the stress on the base. The pyramid ended up shorter by nearly 100 feet and lighter by over 400,000 tons. Though it no longer matched the original vision, the structure held. Over 4,500 years later, it still stands, bearing silent witness to a mistake turned into success. Engineering wisdom in stone. The bent pyramid was more than just a mistake. It was a lesson carved in limestone. It revealed the importance of choosing the right foundation, the right angles, and the right distribution of weight. Sneferu's architects learned from the ordeal. Their next project, the Red Pyramid, would be a careful, cautious response. Built at a conservative 43-degree angle, it remains one of the best preserved pyramids in Egypt, and it was the first successful smooth-sided pyramid in history. With this success under their belts, Egyptian architects began pushing the limits once more. Their crowning achievement? The Great Pyramid of Giza, Khufu's monument to eternity, built at a refined angle of 51.8 degrees, standing nearly 481 feet high. But how did they get massive stone blocks to such incredible heights? Lifting the unliftable. The ramp theories. As the pyramids grew taller, one critical question loomed larger. How did they raise stones weighing 2.5 to 15 tons to such heights, without cranes, pulleys, or iron? Most Egyptologists agree that the answer lies in ramps. But what kind of ramp could handle such an epic task? A straight-on ramp from the ground to the top would have required an absurdly long stretch, over a mile, using more materials than the pyramid itself. A zigzag ramp, climbing back and forth up one face, would reduce this bulk, but add complexity and reduce visibility. A spiral ramp, wrapping around the pyramid like a corkscrew, would offer compactness, but limit precision when placing final capstones. Archaeological evidence for any specific ramp system is scant, likely because they were dismantled after construction. Yet fragments of rubble, sloped roadbeds, and alignment trenches hint at a combination of these methods. Some experts suggest the ramp system evolved with height, beginning with a straight or zigzag base ramp, then transitioning to an internal or spiral system higher up. The exact truth remains elusive, but the mathematical foresight and human will required to execute any of these theories remains breathtaking. The forgotten genius of the builders. It's easy to marvel at the monuments and forget the minds behind them. The trial and error process that led to the perfection of the Great Pyramid was not built on divine intervention or alien technology. It was built by thinking humans. They learned from failure. They experimented. They recalculated. They respected their materials. And perhaps most importantly, they planned for permanence. We know this because no major pyramid after the bent pyramid was ever built at such a steep angle again. The caution learned from Sneferu's near disaster became a golden rule. That kind of institutional memory, passed down through generations of builders, is rare even in modern corporations. But ancient Egypt had it, and they used it to great effect. The final form: pyramid geometry and stability. Why the pyramid shape at all? From a purely structural standpoint, the pyramid is incredibly stable. Its broad base and tapering sides create a low center of gravity, distributing weight evenly downward. Over 2/3 of its mass lies in the lower third, anchoring it deep into the earth. But structurally sound doesn't mean easy. The pyramid shape also required perfectly aligned corners, evenly laid stones, massive labor to maintain level floors at every tier. And yet they achieved it again and again, over 500 years, constructing at least 18 major pyramids and dozens of smaller ones. The learning curve, visible through trial and error, is itself one of the most astonishing records of engineering evolution in antiquity. For centuries, a powerful myth dominated the imagination of the world, that the pyramids were built by legions of oppressed slaves, laboring under the lash of cruel masters. Hollywood perpetuated it. Some biblical interpretations reinforced it. But modern archaeology tells a very different story, one far more human and perhaps even more extraordinary. Today, we know that the pyramids were not built by slaves, but by a workforce of skilled laborers, artisans, and volunteers, brought together in one of the largest and most efficient construction projects the world has ever seen. The myth of slavery, shattered by science. The idea of slave labor, particularly Jewish slaves, constructing the pyramids was widely believed for centuries. However, no archaeological evidence supports this theory. The Pyramid Age, specifically the Old Kingdom, around 2600 to 2400 BCE, predates the traditional biblical timeline of the Exodus by nearly 1,000 years. More importantly, excavations around the Giza Plateau have unearthed compelling evidence that completely contradicts the slavery narrative. In the 1990s, a team led by Dr. Zahi Hawass and Dr. Mark Leiner discovered tombs of pyramid workers near the base of the monuments. These were not hastily dug pits or mass graves. They were carefully constructed burial chambers, complete with pottery, bread, beer jars, and even beef bones, offerings for the afterlife. This kind of care was not given to slaves. These were honored citizens, people who had played a vital role in a sacred national project. If they were slaves, Dr. Hawass remarked, they would never have been buried in the shadow of the king's pyramid. The Workers' City, a lost civilization. Recovered further excavation revealed the footprint of a sprawling workers' city located to the southeast of the pyramid complex. This city contained dormitories for thousands of workers, bakeries producing massive quantities of bread, ovens, granaries and brewhouses, storage rooms for meat, fish, and dried goods, administrative buildings, evidence of centralized planning. Mark Leiner's team calculated that this settlement may have housed between 10,000 to 20,000 people at any given time. This would have made it one of the largest urban centers in the world at that time. It was not a slave camp. It was a logistical masterpiece. Diet of the pyramid builders, better than you think. What the workers ate also paints a vivid picture. Analysis of bones and cooking pits found in the workers' city shows that the laborers were well fed, especially by ancient standards. Workers received daily rations of bread, onions, garlic, and most importantly, meat. Cattle bones were found in abundance, suggesting beef was regularly served. Fish, poultry, and even beer were part of the regular diet. This level of nutrition is not consistent with forced laborers. It indicates a valued workforce, one that was not only paid in the form of food, clothing, and lodging, but also respected. Interestingly, higher-ranking supervisors and artisans were found to consume significantly more meat, especially goat and cattle. This reveals an early version of middle management, with privileges based on rank and skill. Who were these workers? So who were the people who moved millions of stones by hand? Most were likely farmers from across Egypt. During the annual Nile flood, their fields would be underwater for months, rendering them temporarily unemployed. The state recruited them to work on national projects during this downtime. This system created a kind of national draft, not for war, but for construction. Villagers would come in shifts, working for several months before returning home. It was seasonal labor, not slavery. They worked alongside full-time artisans, stonemasons, surveyors, architects, and craftsmen, many of whom lived permanently near the pyramid site and were considered among Egypt's elite workers. Together, these groups formed a national workforce that was mobile, skilled, and deeply motivated by religion, patriotism, and pride. Forensic clues. Evidence from the bones. Physical remains of the workers have provided even more insights. Forensic studies on skeletons from the Giza Workers' Cemetery show that many had healed broken bones, indicating access to medical care. Some had early forms of surgery, including trepanning, drilling into the skull. Signs of arthritis and muscular stress suggest intense manual labor, but also that injured workers were not discarded, but treated. These weren't disposable slaves. They were citizens, people whose health and contribution mattered. Manpower on a monumental scale. It's estimated that the Great Pyramid required around 23 years to complete. During peak construction, between 10,000 to 30,000 workers were on site, with even more involved indirectly, providing food, materials, transportation, and administrative support. Let's put that in perspective. To meet the timeline, workers would have needed to place a stone every 2 minutes, every day, for 2 decades. Each stone, some weighing 2 to 15 tons, had to be quarried, transported, shaped, and placed. All this was done without wheels, without cranes, without iron. It was a feat of nationwide coordination, comparable in complexity to the logistics of a modern-day mega-infrastructure project, but without the benefits of modern machinery or digital communication. Everything ran on human muscle, papyrus records, and meticulous planning. A nation united. More than anything else, the pyramids show us what ancient Egypt was capable of as a civilization. They weren't just built by laborers, they were built by a nation. Engineers designed every angle to divine perfection. Artisans shaped every stone with care and tradition. Farmers, when not tending crops, contributed to the immortal legacy of their kings. The pyramids were not just monuments to the dead, they were symbols of what the living could accomplish together. One of the greatest engineering enigmas of the ancient world is this. How did the Egyptians lift millions of multi-ton stones hundreds of feet into the air without cranes, pulleys, or wheels? Egyptologists like Mark Lehner, who has spent over 30 years studying the pyramids firsthand, believe the answer lies in one powerful concept: ramps. But exactly what kind of ramps were used remains a hotly debated question. There are 3 leading theories. A straight ramp built directly from the ground to the pyramid face. A zigzagging switchback ramp running along one face of the pyramid. A spiral ramp encircling the pyramid like a massive corkscrew. Each theory has merits and challenges. A straight ramp, for example, would need to be more than a mile long to achieve a gentle enough slope for hauling. That would have required as much material as the pyramid itself. A spiral ramp, on the other hand, would have limited visibility and made precise placement of stones near the top extremely difficult. No definitive evidence remains, because the ramps, being temporary structures, were dismantled after construction was complete. But traces of rubble, foundation lines, and laborer camps still hint at the monumental effort involved. What we do know is this: whatever ramp system was used, it required immense manpower and organization. The workforce behind the wonder. For centuries, popular legends claimed that the pyramids were built by slaves, possibly the biblical Israelites. But modern archaeology tells a different story. Excavations led by Dr. Zahi Hawass unearthed workers' tombs right beside the pyramids. These were not the tombs of slaves. They were respectfully built, containing pottery, tools, and even beef and bread offerings for the afterlife. If they were slaves, they would never have received such dignified burials in the shadow of the very monument they helped build. More recent studies even show signs of medical care among the workers. Broken bones had been set, and one skull showed evidence of early brain surgery, a level of treatment slaves would never have received. The emerging picture is of a skilled labor force, possibly drawn from across Egypt. These were not forced workers, but loyal citizens, many of whom rotated in and out of service like a national military duty. Mark Lehner discovered the ruins of a large settlement southeast of the pyramid complex, a city of workers. Its layout, ovens, bakeries, and storage rooms suggest a well-organized infrastructure capable of feeding and housing thousands. Evidence suggests workers were given beer, fish, and meat, including prized beef, indicating how highly valued they were. Middle managers, the foremen and skilled artisans, ate even better: sheep, goat, and lavish portions of cattle. Pyramid building was not a punishment. It was a state-run operation of pride and devotion, backed by logistics that rival even modern construction projects.